It's, this sounds like television. It isn't. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Thursday. It must be Thursdays with Thomas on IDAGIO Live, the place where classical music happens. You know how much I love to say that. But I can tell you what, we're going to have an evening of where classical music and opera is unexpectedly happening in a major way in one of the most unexpected places. Not to mention the Americas, but we'll get to that. As you can see, I have a couple of guests with me this evening, Maria Sensi Sellner and Matt Boresi. Welcome to IDAGIO Live. Uh, One of the things I love about this series, and I've been doing it now for the last, like, I don't know, when I started in late March, beginning of April, first, for everybody, as you know, idagio.com is a wonderful streaming platform. It's the deepest catalog, and they were the granddaddy. They are the granddaddy. They've been at this longer than anybody else, providing classical music in a streaming user interface that is built by classical musicians for the use of classical music. It's a big deal. The database is huge, 20,000 composers. You can wander around aimlessly or very aimed for as long as you would like to. And that's the streaming base. There was always wanted to do a video component to Idagio, and the important thing about it is to think about Idagio is not a record company. It's not even a record sales place. It's not a record store. It's more like a musical library in your pocket. That goes with you everywhere, and it's fantastic. You can make playlists. You can do. I probably won't get that in tonight, but how you actually can use the interface. But the fun thing about expanding with Idagio is that we started with wanting to do some actual video and have video on it, but with the COVID crisis, and that's going to come up in a pretty big way this evening in our project tonight, it was clear we needed to find a way to keep the community united and keep them informed and the big thing was, how can we let our public who loves classical music know more about the people who actually perform, invent, create, whatever we do all together, and enliven that community and put faces and names and thoughts behind maybe just the name of somebody on a recording they might have known. And that has been an enormous adventure and great adventure. I also do another evening on Tuesdays, which I'm shamelessly promoting, about, and it's all about song. And it's now a partnership with my foundation, Hampson Foundation, and it's called Song and Beyond, because it is about all kinds of song, uh, both the genre of song, but also in various languages and so forth. But that's Tuesday. Tonight we have, and this is what I meant at the beginning about loving this project, because I get to meet people I've never met before. I get to explore projects I may have never come across before, and that's one of these tonight. This is not an idagio.com project you're going to be able to look up, but this is without question the future of classical music, and it's such an exciting project. And that's my preamble. Let's get to it. Maria, it's wonderful to meet you. We off air shared the fact that I was your backup singer for the for the Brahms Requiem. A one, a two, a one. Anyway, in Pittsburgh, which is where you're dialing in from tonight. Matt, did I back you up somewhere? Or I think our paths have never crossed.
I don't think we've met in person. I've certainly enjoyed your singing many a time, but this is our first face-to-face.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was an unpaid compliment. Thank you very much. You're in Chicago, right?
I am.
One of my favorite cities. Wonderful. Great. Let's get to this. Maria, you are a composer. You're not a composer. You are a conductor. You are a singer. You are a musician. Where did you grow up? Give us the 2.5 minute Wikipedia.
Sure. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in a tiny little town called Arnold, Pennsylvania, where my parents still live. And I went to Carnegie Mellon University, and I studied. I actually never thought I would be a musician. I actually studied mechanical engineering as well as music, and I was a composition major. So you're not too wrong when you say that. But I'm not a composer currently. I studied conducting with Robert Page, and he changed my life. He put me in the opera pit, and that was that, as they say. And in 2013, I started a little company in Pittsburgh called Resonance Works, and we we have a season of performances that are really incredibly varied. It would include fully staged opera, but in very small, intimate settings, and
Right.
chamber orchestra programming, chamber choir, recitals, you name it, and we mix and mingle all of those genres in a way that I don't really see a lot of organizations doing, and we have the ability to do that. So we've been going for seven
When did
years.
you form the company?
2013.
2013. And before 2013?
Before 2013, I still work as a freelance conductor uh, here and there and everywhere. I had a very long relationship with the Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh. I was
Right.
on, with 15 years, I was on the conducting staff for a number of those years. And I was the chorus director for the Akron Symphony Orchestra in Akron, Ohio, as well. And I returned to my alma mater, Carnegie Mellon, for some opera productions. I was interim faculty for a short time, and so it was a little bit of everything.
So why did you want to start a company?
Uh, when I studied with Bob, his advice to me, and this is the words that ring in my ears. He said, "You have to do the music you love," and this was a way to do that, and it was a way to create opportunities for artistic colleagues of mine that I would see getting hired to do certain things, but our programming was really based on starting with the artist, and we wouldn't say, "Here's our season, let's cast it." We start with, "Here's some fantastic people we want to work with, and what repertoire, what productions can we create around these people?" So
What a
that's
novel
always been,
idea.
I know, right? Uh, so that's how we actually started with
Isn't that what they
Verdi.
used to do?
Yeah,
Hmm.
I know. Yeah.
I love it. But was it also when you say things, so that your passion you're talking about is opera in general or a particular opera repertoire or
Well,
even new works?
I mean, I would say opera in general. I tend to gravitate towards the works of Verdi, and plus contemporary American and English work. I
Yeah,
spent so
but
much
that's already
time in
quite
opera.
unusual. That's a range. I
Yeah.
mean, Verdi is the birth of liberty and the voice of liberty in so many ways. And who doesn't? When Verdi and gravity are sort of synonyms, and I get that. But to follow that up with your sentence immediately about American opera, which is, I think, one of the most wholly, obscenely neglected genres in our American repertoire to date. There are so many, but I'm going to put that one right up there at the top. I mean, there's been some wonderful American opera written in the 20th century, especially that, has had a few performances and it disappears. Why is that?
I mean, I think that's a good question. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about the canon in the opera business, and I think we have to remember, in the time of Verdi, they wanted the newest work. They
Right.
were looking for his next big hit, and that mindset seems to has changed over these
Well,
years, and it needs to be alive. It needs to be a living art form.
one of the things that, I mean, there's a phrase that you guys have on your websites, and Matt, you're not, I'm coming, but, but what keeps showing up is storytelling. And we have sort of, I don't know what the word is, but we've turned, as you say, the canon, and so when people say Verdi, they, oh yes, I love Verdi. And of course there's this Verdi soprano and that Verdi baritone. And yet, if you know anything about Verdi's operas, it's very difficult to classify exactly the kind of voice that should sing it. But and just what you said about the Italian audiences of Verdi's time, it wasn't just the beautiful voices and exciting, but he changed the shape of theater without question. And as well, it was always about telling stories that everybody sitting there identified with some part of some character. And we've moved into a genre. We've moved into a fach. We've moved into a timbre of a voice and a type of a performer on the operatic stages. Am I hitting some buttons for you? Is this, and you probably as well, Matt? Of course, you're more musical theater, but I don't want to, I don't mean that quite as separate as well, but it's just a different, perhaps a different glacier of the same mountain.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there's opportunity in telling stories now that really relate to people, right?
Hmm.
That's that's really what we're doing with this project. What we're trying to do is, all of the pieces involved in this project are opera,
Right.
but if you didn't put that label on it, it wouldn't be necessary to put that label on it. It's storytelling in a musical way.
Matt, jump in on this because I think it's incredibly important. I find myself talking a lot to European colleagues. Late 20th century, those lines of opera and musical theater, or in fact, the word musical theater to me represents more what American opera in general has been about than necessarily a genre, as it were, and specifically some of my great forebearers. I mean, like Gordon MacRae or Howard Keel, the legends or Alfred Drake, whom I met, or John Raitt, whom I sang with. Those guys were more classically trained. I mean, this is pre-microphone Broadway and all that kind of stuff. Where do you tie in with all the part of the discussion up till now? And by the way,
Well,
can we have a 2.5 minute Wikipedia of you as well?
Oh, certainly. Well, I'm Matt Boresi, and I am in Chicago. And I was like Maria. I grew up in the country in rural Illinois, just outside of Chicago, in a town called Coal City. And so there are a lot of people with vowels at the end of their names because Italian labor came over at the beginning of the past century to work in the coal mines. And so there was, I think to some degree, opera is a part of the heritage there, even though it is a rural Illinois town. Eventually, I found my way to New York University to their musical theater writing program. However, by that time, I already intended on writing opera. Luckily, I ran into a composer who's based in Philadelphia named Peter Hilliard, who I worked on Tales from a Safe Distance with. And he had just come from San Francisco Conservatory. And we met and I said, hey, we're in a musical theater writing program, but I'm really hoping to write libretti here. And he said, funny you should say that. I'm hoping to write opera scores. And other people have come from that program who write opera as well.
So who paid for dinner?
Yes. But it gave us a chance to look at like what excites particularly American audiences, but global audiences about musical theater, but still use our opera backgrounds and our love of opera to try to fuse the best of those and bring them to the operatic stage. We talk a lot about, they asked Rossini once, what are the three most important things about opera? The three most important factors in opera. And he said, voce, 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 the voice, the voice, the voice. They asked George M. Cohan, what are the three most important things in musical theater? And he said, speed, speed, and more speed.
I love it.
And I do think that there's some.
Of course, there's only 85 years between them, but never mind. Yeah.
But we study Verdi and particularly the Verdi Boito correspondences, but all of Verdi's correspondences with his librettists. And he was such a man of the theater.
Exactly. And if somebody asked me today, what do you think the key is of moving musical theater, meaning opera and theater, to get in any country, but especially in America, I would say story, story, story. Mm-hmm. If we're not telling the story, if people aren't sitting there going, oh, I get that. Oh, I know where that came from. And this is something, of course, our film industry has just, washed over us in big ways, especially in its maturity from the 50s on, the 60s on. But let's get back to musical theater and English. By the way, your name Boresi, are you an Italian? Do you speak Italian?
I am indeed. My family is from, I'm Italian on both sides, but Boresi came from Modena, and I have Piemontese family as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you must have fun having conversations with Luca.
I do indeed.
Your protagonist for your piece. All right, Coal. When you said Coal City, because my cousins grew up in. Oh, I knew I was going to mess this up. Just outside of it's also a suburb of Chicago. When you said coal, I thought COLE, and I didn't realize there was a coal community or even some kind of coal in that far north in Illinois. Mm-hmm. Oh my God!
Yeah, you think of it primarily as agricultural, which it is as well. But right. There were evidently they may be spent now, but there were coal veins at the time.
Wow. Fantastic. So let's go back to resonance I want to keep wanting saying Renaissance, but it's obviously not. But I'm just dyslexic that way. Um, I think my tongue was born of another mother, but never mind. Resonance Works. That is a wonderful title. You've been at it from 2013. Are you doing, you're doing moderate, but I just quickly looked at your website, which we're going to do some screen showing and do that. But are you doing Verdi as well as new works, or have you found yourself more in new works? What is your repertoire of the company?
The repertoire is really varied. We actually launched the company with a intimate production, a reduced orchestra production of Macbeth, of Verdi's
Wow.
Macbeth, which I was inspired by the Royal Shakespeare Company DVD that I had. You know, it was all, everybody was in black, and I said, you know, I can afford that. We can do we can do that. We can make that work.
If there's
And
an opera that can work, it's certainly that one.
yeah, absolutely. And really, opera has informed all of our programming. It has been a mix of repertoire from, you know, from Bach. We did a St. John Passion last season, to more contemporary works. We built a whole program around David Lang's Little Match Girl Passion
Oh,
uh,
nice.
a couple of seasons ago, and I really love putting older music next to newer music. I think that we each can inform the other. So I really love mixing that repertoire, because we've always been telling stories, and there's themes that you know last over the centuries.
So pre-COVID, everything was also staged.
So all the operas were staged. Some things were staged. Some things were in concert.
Okay.
We had a variety of
Semi-staged.
semi-staged. Yeah, a variety. We like the St. John Passion was a concert performance, as you might expect. But the operas were all staged.
Matt, you mentioned New York University. Are you a colleague of Royce Vavrick?
We were there different years, so we actually have not met. I mean, it's funny that librettists. You know, anytime I'm in an opera conversation, someone says, "Do you know this librettist? Do you know that librettist?" And typically the answer is no. Like we see one another's works in different cities,
Yeah.
but other than the occasional opera conference, librettists are, they're siloed. So hopefully there's a conversation of across art of one another's works, but we rarely meet.
I think that's actually a pretty fair description in varying degrees of our industry in general. You know, I've been at this for a while, and I'm still meeting people that have been equally at it for a while, and both you know, conductors, composers, librettists, certainly singers. So it's interesting that can happen. Um, as you with your passion for opera, have you also do you direct, or you just write?
I mean, I direct as well. I think that, to be a full-time, all the time librettist is a tough row to hoe. It's a bit like being a buggy whip manufacturer at this point. I mean, there's only so much call for opera libretti. So, I do professoring in musical theater and opera, and teaching and arts integration work.
Do you write librettos that are not commissioned? Do you invent librettos that are just looking for a conductor or a composer to walk by someday?
Well, I guess the short answer is we try not to. We try to have a long pitch sheet, like if you were to come to
Yeah.
me and say an opera tomorrow, I could open a menu and say which of these, but they're not written.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I pitch a few on the spot. We Sometimes we just get so passionate about an idea that I just have to put words to paper, or perhaps Peter has to make some black dots on paper. But we try to keep a nice supply of potential operas, and then when the opportunity comes along, we go.
Okay, let's go back with it. Wonderful, thank you. And Wikipedia can thank us for all that. Now that we've got some perspective of who we're talking to and where we're coming from. You, Maria, COVID hits, and you think to yourself, this isn't going to happen. This is wrong. This is something else has to happen. Something else has to be in terms of production. Had you and Matt known each other before? Are you old teammates or something?
So we were actually working. I was working with Peter and Matt on a different project that we were supposed to produce in April.
Right.
As a benefit for our company. And so we had not worked together before that. but we were in regular communications about that project. And so when COVID hit and everything shut down, we had to indefinitely postpone everything that we had planned for the year. Basically, we didn't know that at the time, but that's what happened. And I asked the question. I said, well, what does opera look like in 6 months? I had been thinking about that. I found Peter and Matt to be very creative people, and I thought, they might have some perspective on this that I don't have, and that's really how this happened. Right? We had that conversation, and then I got an email the very next day and said, "Can you get on a Zoom call? We have an idea." And that's
Now wait a minute. When did Zoom come into your life?
that was about when Zoom came into my life. Honestly, I was not that, I confess, not an avid Zoom user, here and there, but mostly not. And
I was actually, because I'm very involved with Manhattan School of Music, and there was a wonderful woman who tragically died of cancer just this year, who headed up all of the online distance learning projects, and she was a guru, and I learned everything from her, and she was fantastic. And I remember we were looking at learning management platforms, and also we were very involved with Polycom, and trying to figure out how can you teach in real time. And Pinchas Zuckerman is doing synchronous and asynchronous classes from Ottawa, and I'm trying to do some things, all this stuff. And in comes this interloper, a young startup company called Zoom. And so we looked at it and we ran it through the paces, and when we liked it very much. I find this is a long time ago, it was when they first started, and we gave them feedback and said, we think Skype should be nervous. And we're not even going to say FaceTime because they never got it right. But what we're and she said, but what we're after at Manhattan, we're trying to get learning platform managed platforms and on AI, and just kind of separated the ways. Had I simply dropped 5,000 into that. Anyway, so we're all having this Zoom moment in the spring, and it's becoming the platform of choice, and rightfully so. It is, and I'm not here to plug Zoom or anything else. I think one of the most, I'm trying to find the right words here, because I don't want to say positive things about this horrible pandemic and all of its tragedy. But we are in a new now. We are collectively across the world in a new readiness to embrace a digital now that we can do extraordinary things in for the banal parts of our lives, as well as we're going to experience, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the most exciting kinds of envelope pushing things that we can do, that both are in itself a development of an art form, but as well, without question, geographically not limited, pandemically not limited, musically not limited. And so I'm teasing you. We're going to get there, I promise. But I want the story to unravel. So you have this brainstorm. And all of a sudden serendipity kicks in, as she does when one is ready for things to happen. And quickly you've got like-minded people saying, okay, how can we do something different? Is that what happened?
I mean, that.
Yes. Well, Peter Hilliard and I were looking at a very bare cupboard for the rest of the year, as everyone in opera was. And we thought, not only how can we have an opportunity to create new work in this vacuum where we may have a surplus of energy and time to write, but no channel. But how can we create something that isn't just a consolation prize while you wait for the opera houses to reopen, or some sort of workaround or patch, a simulacrum of a stage work? How can we create something that is meant for this medium? So that when you are watching it, you are watching what was intended to be watched as it was intended to be watched. And chapeau to Peter, he said, have you thought about the Decameron lately? And of course, I hadn't thought about the Decameron since undergrad, when you read some of the Decameron. And Boccaccio's Decameron is a story of 10 people waiting out the Black Plague in the 14th century outside of Florence. And they're on lockdown, and they're trying to figure out what to do. So they passed the time with one another by telling stories. And Maria had said, if you have any ideas, give us a shout. And we said, how fast can you get on Zoom? Because we have this idea.
I love it.
And there was not only an artistic component to this notion, but Peter and I have had such fortune working with independent companies and small independent opera companies across the United States, like Resonance Works. There are these companies producing marvelous work, and they are commissioning, and they are doing new work, And they are doing experimental things and site-specific things and trying all sorts of new things. And they are not unloved. They have deeply loyal patron bases who sometimes also consume, they may be season ticket holders at the local large regional companies, or perhaps this is their only entree into opera. So these companies are also creating an audience. And we have had wonderful luck with quality productions and commissions from works like Urban Arias in Washington, D.C., Bob Wood, Sarah Lawrence at Lyric Opera of the North in Duluth, Minnesota, and of course, Resonance Works in Pittsburgh. And so Peter said, we've got to get some of these folks on the horn and see if perhaps their combined energies and gifts can create a force that can rise above the din of people trying to, reach out on the online market and create a national or international opera event that is truly new and different and the future. So we called Maria, and from Maria, we called Sarah and Bob at Urban Arias and Lyric Opera of the North. And they in turn called more companies who we will give credit to momentarily. And we said, could we adapt the Decameron, which is by its nature anthological, like the 10 people in the Boccaccio, say each day, each of us will tell a story. And at the end of the Decameron loosely translates to the 10 days. And after 10 days, the 10 of us will have told 100 stories. And then hopefully the plague will have lifted and off we go back into Florence. And now I doubt the plague had lifted that quickly, as it has not here. But we thought, what if we had 10 stories, 10 teams of stories, 10 creative teams that could adapt 10 pieces from the Decameron of their choice, or pieces inspired by the Decameron, to our contemporary moment and speak to what lockdown means for all of us in all our different cities where these and countries where the works come from.
This is incredibly clever. I love it. And of course, we're all grabbing our beat up mini red copies of Boccaccio. Okay, so Boccaccio, ladies and gentlemen, is spelled Boccaccio. Okay, Boccaccio. And I'm sure that if you go onto Kindle or any other EPUB, it's free. I'm sure it's just one of those books that says you probably should have this, and you can get it. And yes, you should have a look at it. I love the genesis of this. I'm tempted to go into screen sharing and go online. At this point, you guys tell me, would it make sense for that promo video that you did, Matt, with your colleague? Would that be a good thing to look at now?
Sure, that would be lovely.
All right, I'm here. Just bear with me. I've set everything up here. Please don't mess me up. Let's go to Safari on event. Let's see, that should work. Yeah. I did it. Okay, now that's already not the story we want to do. I want to go over here to, here we are. This is actually on a website you guys built for this project called Decameron, right?
Mm-hmm.
Decameron Opera Coalition. And the coalition of these 10 companies, and it's a fun site to look through, and it's got, this introduction will just, hook you completely. But and these are the episodes. We are going to have a look, ladies and gentlemen, at the episode 1. I registered. I've gotten in it. It's incredible. Just blew me away. So you've got all sorts of promo things, and you can look at the complete list of artists. You can get to know the company a little bit in the coalition. Down here, Peter Hilliard and Matt Boresi did a little 3-minute video on what this is all about. So let's take 3 minutes and let's listen to this. Okay.
I'm composer Peter Hilliard.
And I'm librettist Matt Boresi. The COVID-19 pandemic hit the opera world hard. And this past spring, we found ourselves wondering just how we could continue to create new work, collaborate with singers we love, and share music and poetry with the world.
Boccaccio's Decameron. Maybe you read it in undergrad, maybe you know it well, maybe you've just heard the name for the first time. It's a 14th century novel about people telling stories while they wait out the Black Plague near Florence. This spring, a lot of people were reading it again. 6 months ago, I had an idea. What if we created a project in that same storytelling spirit with a group of opera companies?
So we called companies who we appreciate and trust. Resonance Works in Pittsburgh, Urban Arias in Washington, D.C., Lyric Opera of the North in Duluth, Minnesota. Indie opera companies who are doing important work and who are beloved by a fiercely loyal base of patrons.
Because indie companies are able to make quick decisions and think creatively, somehow it worked. 6 more companies joined us, and ultimately 9 of the most exciting and diverse voices in new opera from across the country were working together for the very first time. Opera in the Heights in Houston, Bear Opera in New York City, Fargo Moorhead Opera, an opera theater in Minneapolis, Milwaukee Opera Theater, and Chicago Fringe Opera.
10 creative teams have come together to make a contemporary adaptation of the Decameron called Tales from a Safe Distance. 9 one-act chapters and a 10th framing story, a virtual reunion of a group of friends passing time during the lockdown by telling stories. And the frame features internationally respected bass baritone Luca Pizzaroni.
As each of the friends shares a story in the form of a brief new opera, you'll hear what we've known for a long time. New opera is alive and well in America, all across America.
This isn't a concert or a conversation or a rebroadcast. It's a world premiere of new opera with characters and costumes and a sense of place. Remember places?
If you think opera is only one thing, this project will change your mind. It's diverse, it's fresh, it's work for artists, it's new music, it's classic stories retold for our modern era.
The premiere is divided into 4 episodes, with the first streaming on Friday, October 9th, and new episodes on the 16th, 23rd, and 30th. Once you've purchased your ticket, you've got a pass to watch and rewatch all the episodes in any order for the rest of the year. And on the night of each premiere, you'll be invited to a live stream after party with some of the artists.
This project has created work for 86 artists in a time when most stages are empty and silent. So head to DecameronOperaCoalition.org for your ticket for Tales from a Safe Distance, and consider a donation to any or all of the coalition companies which keep new and independent opera alive across America.
Thank you, and we hope you enjoy.
Great, guys. And this, by the way, is, let me go back here. We're going to go back here. These are some of the artists that are involved. I'm going to get out of the, be quiet. This is the Decameron, but I also wanted to say, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in, where are you? Oh, here, guys. This is Hilliard and Boresi. You obviously have had some pretty amazing projects over the last years from Pittsburgh Opera and North and so forth. I would really recommend you, ladies and gentlemen, going to Hilliard and Boresi website and just dropping the needles on some new and wonderful theater works that, the Blue Viola, I'm going to go back and watch. I love it. It's great fun. Now, because the sharing can get a little tiresome, now we're back here in the living room, having a drink. So the things that pops in my mind, a couple of things is, what has the reaction been? What are you getting for a viewer base, and and how long do these things stay online, and where will they live? And, for the person that sees this interview in February and goes, oh, I missed that, what do they do then?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, all of the 9 companies involved in the coalition have been looking for ways to engage our normal audience base, the people that we usually see live in person. And so getting those audiences to transition to experiencing new performances. A lot of us have been sharing archived performances
Right.
online, but to move towards new performances through an online platform has been a transition, and I think it's an ongoing one. So one of the things that we wanted to do was make something available for a long period of time. So once each episode premieres, it will be available and online through the end of the year, and then we'll see how it goes from there. If we need to do more than that, but you have the opportunity to watch it again and again. We hope that word will spread, so there isn't, you may have missed the live after party for the premiere, but you haven't missed anything if you find out about this December 1st, as opposed to
parties are overrated. No, but I love that. So if one buys it, if I got my ticket today, I'm good to go for what, 12 months?
You're good to go. Well, at the moment, the plan is to have the episodes available through the end of the year. So from now through December 31st for now.
And what I also deeply applaud you for, and it's of course completely consistent with IDAGIO.com. And by the way, as you well know, IDAGIO.com is very committed to finding a way to help make this stay alive and partner with you on this. And we know that it could be interesting. But IDAGIO, when they launched in June, the Global Concert Hall at the end of May. The notion was exactly what you say, Matt, at the beginning and your pitch, and that is that we need to produce stuff that is for the digital and analog audience at the same time. It's a little different than yours. Your is a real, for you produced, this is how you want to have it. But this, what I call the third rail of performance, which is certainly our new now, and it's not going to change. It's not going to go away. We're going to see a complete metamorphosis, if you will, of the HD philosophy. But even more to the point is that having it as a paywall, offering people, it's not charging people, it's offering the people to contribute to the livelihood of artistic adventure, I think is so important. It's the underlying philosophy behind the Global Concert Hall, and it's what we need to do to move forward in the notion of creativity, rather than just, oh, you're stuck at home, here, let me throw you, 75 hours of the best opera that was ever recorded on television over the last 5 years. And it's not just about the money, it's the participation, it's the I am part of this process that I think is so important to the arts. It is not a passive environment. The arts are what invigorate the imagination. They are from our imagination. It is the story of us. I could go on forever, which anybody knows me, I do, and so I won't. However, are you getting any feedback from other quote unquote, or let's say next tier opera companies? I can imagine Houston calling up and saying, that was clever, well done.
Well, we haven't gotten those phone calls yet. But I'll say that we are getting a lot of wonderful feedback from our patrons and from
Right.
people all over the world. That's one of the things that, my small company in Pittsburgh really wouldn't have a reason to reach people on the other side of the world. But we sold a ticket to someone in Cape Town this week, and a number of people in Europe, and all over the world. It's exciting to see. Our little ticketing platform puts a little dot everywhere that we sell a ticket, and we look at that map and just love how it's spreading across the U.S. and across the world.
Fantastic. Well, this is why you're here on this show. I mean, IDAGIO is about classical music across the world. It's not about just getting people to sign on to idagio.com. Having this conversation, hopefully, will get your bouquet even bigger, get people aware of something that they might not have come across their consciousness. It's a very exciting process. Have we talked about it enough that maybe we should go look?
Sure.
Let's have a look. All right, we're going to go back into screen sharing. And where are we? Yes, yeah, here we are. Now this is really going to be fun. Now, as you remember, we're still on Hilliard, and this is the Decameron website. Now, if you come to this website and you want to look at this, you're going to go here. You can see the team, and you just keep going through windows, and eventually you're going to come to something that actually signs you up for it, and it'll look something like that. And it isn't expensive, as you can see, at all. I mean, 4 nights at the opera for $15. I'll do that. And now this is actually a frozen picture. I'm going to start at even the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, this is truly the opening scene of a truly innovative burst of creativity born out of crises. It said, no, we're not going to give in. No, we're not going to sit in our rooms. No, people need to share stories with one another.
Once again sucked in, great of awful little mother. Every meeting, every call to connect with anyone at all. Pours some alcohol and up pop the boxes. Bunkered in our little places. Smiling faces inside a little square. I'm in here and you're in there, inside your little window. To a cozy cell.
From our Jean-Paul's heart, part of hell. It's a fitting bit of bitter paradox. We can only stand, I
keeping distance from the gloom and the probable impending doom. Trapped in a clouded room, on Google Meet, just like a zoom, 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 zoom. Watch every show on Netflix twice, I guess I found them funny. Between compulsive fever checks and panic over money. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
You look so good.
Thank God you're well.
It's been too long.
Only way to see us through a box. Clock it. Wanna keeping me here in the box. Lock it. Want protect Philippe up in the box. To hawk it. Walking down the streets here in the box. Gotta stock it.
Got no place to store away this anxiousness and sorrow. Didn't go outside today. Won't go outside tomorrow. 1, 2, 3.
I mean, how fun is that? And that's only 5-6 minutes into the show. Oh my gosh. I'm watching this and in full disclosure, clearly I have a back channel connection to your protagonist, Luca, but I haven't actually talked about this at all. But I've heard that the instructions of what he had to do and how he had to do it with how many cameras, but we're talking about iPhone cameras. We're talking about normal cameras, good microphones, but very specific instruction, meaning very specific direction, which somebody mastermind before they send it out to all of these singers, having kind of an idea how you're going to have to cut in to make the looks. I have no idea what goes on from here. This is, amazingly complicated. And by the way,
extremely complicated.
this is not easy music. You got to learn this.
No one pulled any punches on the music, so it's as complicated as any other music that you might sing. But then these poor singers, bless these singers, had to be their their own lighting technician and their own sound technician. And then Maria and Kathy Whitman at Ball Square Films got all this footage. I mean, each individual company has created a one-act opera in all different visual forms. Some are music videos, some are animation, some are augmented reality. And then there's this frame where the singers had to film themselves in their homes like this. And all these, I mean, hundreds of files came in because there's this introduction, there's a closing frame with these 10 singers. And then between each chapter, we meet these 10 singers and they tell their story. And then we get to see a member company's one-act opera. All that data, all those files went to Maria and to Kathy at Ball Square, and they had to line all that up and do. I mean, Maria was conducting. She just wasn't conducting in the room with them. She was conducting by cutting and splicing.
How was this? Was this? This wasn't done. Did you lay a soundtrack that everybody worked against?
For the frame, yes. So because of the timing, as Matt said, all of the chapters came first, and then Matt and Peter went to work pulling a character from each of the stories, each of the 9 operas, to create this happy hour frame, so that the writing of that piece that you saw and everything that goes in between actually followed the writing and the producing of the chapters. So we were working on an actually really tight timeline. So we didn't have the luxury of sending the singers anything except a MIDI track. So Peter actually was incredibly brilliant in how he wrote the music. He did it in such a way that we could have a click track. So I actually conducted, there's a quartet of players that are the little orchestra for what you just heard and for the frame. Right. And we recorded to a click track, and every one of the singers, all 10 singers. Can you
explain to people what a tick track is?
Sure. So everybody that you saw had an earpiece in thank goodness for AirPods, right? You can't see them often, or headphones. And in the way Peter set it up, in one ear, they would hear a MIDI or computer representation of the score, which doesn't sound at all as nice as the violin and clarinet and piano and bass that you hear, along with a click, a literal like click, 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 yeah. And you have to. That's so that we can line it up, so we can create ensemble in a place where there was no ensemble.
These colleagues recorded that to synthesize music?
Yes, and the orchestra did too. So we conducted the 5 of us that were able to be in a room together to record the instrumental parts. We all had an earpiece, and so that the work we did would line up with what the singers were doing. That was all done to click track. And then we had the great task of assembling it all. And the fact is, the musicianship is incredible because when you line it up and you actually get diction that works together most of the time, it's pretty amazing.
And Matt, what part of direction or specificity? Oh, grab the glass now. Say this, do that. Was that all, or were you part of that as well?
To some degree. I mean, you're always trying to get between those goalposts of not letting the singers feel like they're just out to sea with no direction, and also not micromanaging, so that this can feel authentic. And because, I mean, it's set in the characters' homes, we want it to be very, very human and very natural and very subtle.
Right. In other words, all these singers, I think obviously they're all in different places geographically around the globe, and they're all in some environment they're living. I know for a fact that Luca is down in Spain, in Barcelona, doing a Don Giovanni, and he's sort of fitting this in between rehearsals and so forth. So that's not necessarily his apartment, but so you needed to find ways, because I'm sure going on, there's going to be different pictures that are going to come up, and especially people start to tell their stories. I'm going to watch it. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you, this is fun. I mean, you just really need to go on. Like I said, 4 evenings of opera for $15. Come on, it's for a good cause. And I'm sure that it's going to be quite a while before you actually get this whole production paid off. But, sometimes, most of the time, I believe all the time, at the end of the day, if it's not for the greater good, then why do it?
And I mean,
we do have bills to pay.
Absolutely. And
go ahead. I interrupted you, Matt. I beg your pardon, because I just wanted to get that idea that these were, 8 or 9 different domiciles completely. So you had to line that up. You had to get them to get their story. And did that have to hit in particular sinking moments in the score?
They did. I mean, they were certainly were given directions that this is where, you'll all sigh here. And they had to sit and react, because while they're watching, as you watch the different interstitials, the scenes between the chapters that the company's made, each of the characters sings about what's happening in their life and sets up the story they're about to tell. And so there's 9 other people who have to actively listen. But some of the singers have still never met one another. But they had to, again, listen, read, and wait out that time and respond as they would if they were on a call with their friends. Luca was the addition of Luca, who came in late in the process. So we had the 9 chapters, and we knew that the frame would be a Zoom call wherein a group of friends were having a Zoom, like so many people have had Zoom reunions in the course of the lockdown, and they'd tell their stories. And we knew someone would be the host. And we asked Luca to be the host. And when he agreed, his warmth and his nationality as well, the Italian nature of Luca ties it back into the Boccaccio.
It was a no-brainer, or the other metaphor would be a home run. I mean,
both of
great,
those things.
great casting, wonderful.
And he got it. He understood that at the heart of the piece, we are saying that a global pandemic is a catastrophe, and there's death and there's loss. It also creates a window for us to take a breath and experience life and think, prioritize our loved ones and reassess. And in the first conversation with him, before his part had been written, so he had not read it because it did not exist, before we could tell him what we hoped the piece would be about, he expressed that is what he thought the piece would be about and what he hoped the piece would be about. So it ties it back to the Boccaccio, but sort of Luca's spirit and the spirit of the piece marry so well. But then when we leave and see each of their chapters, you will see you'll have a different visual and oral experience each time. Bear Opera's piece was done with augmented reality technology to tell a ghost story. Fargo Moorhead and Urban Arias filmed them like short films, like movies. Urban Arias even used a drone. 2 pieces use animation. The singers exist in a watercolor environment in Lyric Opera of the North's piece. And in Resonance Works piece, it is entirely done with animation. And some of the pieces are music videos. Chicago Fringe Opera did a piece that is filmed on a ship in Lake Michigan and sometimes filmed with a GoPro under Lake Michigan. There's also a music video feel to Opera in the Heights piece by Donia Gerard. And who am I forgetting? I mustn't leave anybody out.
Milwaukee.
Oh my goodness. Milwaukee Opera Theater has created really very much an avant-garde art film set in the woods in a cemetery. It's deeply atmospheric. Anybody else? Oh my goodness. And this month in the United States celebrates awareness of domestic abuse. And an opera theater has created a piece. The lockdown is not all, card games and baking for everyone. Some people may be sheltered in place in danger. And so their piece explores life for domestic abuse victims with an absolutely gorgeous score by Maria Thompson.
I want to wait in. You're being diplomatic about this. Domestic abuse rose dramatically during the COVID crises, which I think everybody needs to just have a think about that. That out of a crisis like this, aggression, animosity, physical danger to family members of all types and all circumstances in all countries becomes the stuff that is also human, that bubbles up to the surface and splashes over, and it's we can wag our fingers and we can say it's disgusting and we can be appalled by it. I find it necessary that we embrace it and realize that that's part of human nature and that we must help one another, protect one another from it. And if I may, a project like this and so many other projects, but something like this is part of that process. It's another outlet. It's another way to vent that which seems incomprehensible in a proportion of crises. I just felt like my chatty Cathy cord got pulled there a little bit. I get terribly personally angry whenever I hear the phrase domestic violence. It's domestic violence and racism are just two words that just catapult me into another kind of energy. And it's not a good energy. Maybe it's a good energy because it's attack, but I don't know. You know what I mean? So, I mean, this is anyway, I had to interrupt you because what you're talking about is a really serious problem.
And I think it's important, and that's the episode that premieres this Friday. It will be the final chapter that you see in episode 3. Kelly Turpin and her team in Minneapolis partnered with Women's Advocates, which is one of the oldest women's shelters in the nation. So that they want to, bring awareness to this subject and also give people some information about what you can do if you are made aware of situations like that are happening around you. So it's really important.
Wow. You guys, what a hell. Okay. I've got the big question. We're not going to talk about budgets and crunches and all. I don't want to know about that. Somebody hopefully will help this. God knows there's enough money in America to make this happen. That's just not a problem. It is a problem, but never mind. Can you imagine that when COVID settles down and people feel like buying tickets again and there's a vaccine and whatever that place is that we're dreaming of right now, could you imagine this turning into a theater production?
We actually talked about that along the way.
First of all, huge reunion. Maybe
Exactly.
If people had never physically met each other.
Well,
Can you imagine?
Sure, but we were
God.
imagining that the whole could actually be done with 10 singers and very few instrumentalists. It would be a very interesting theater piece. What I loved about the project from day one, from that first Zoom call, is that it was both timely, obviously, and timeless. It felt like we could create something that could live beyond this moment in time. And as we have worked together, we had a really hard time finding precedent for this kind of project because every company had their own composer librettist team,
Sure.
which means that it's musically as varied as it is visually varied. And we couldn't find anything else that had been like this. But it really seems, as we were creating this thing together, that there's potential here for a lot of future work. So you see the Decameron Opera Coalition is producing this project. We hope the coalition will maybe live on and have some purpose in the creation of more new work and bringing attention to the amazing art of all of these people.
That was my next question. What's the next project?
That's an excellent question. We're still finishing producing this one, but we all are, I think, interested in having that conversation very soon. And I know that there are some ideas swirling amongst us all. And you talk about this is a horrible time, but there have been some silver linings that have come out of it. I didn't know half of the producers of these companies before. It gave us an opportunity to meet, to work together, to find like-minded people who I hope will be, lifelong partners in various endeavors, and definitely colleagues and friends. And the artists, even our chapter for Resonance Works, our singers were all over the country, and it gave me the opportunity to work with people that I hadn't had the opportunity to before, because if not now in this kind of situation, it sort of opened some things up. And, I look forward to the potential of that moving forward.
Well done. Matt, last thought?
I certainly do. To return it to one of your opening statements, that new work, there's a lot of new work in the world, but for pieces to find their way into the canon or to receive multiple productions has been a challenge. One of the wonderful things about opera is that it is global, that the repertoire, that the singers, that it's all a global endeavor. But sometimes it does feel siloed. You hear about a world premiere over here, but you never get to see it. Things like Adagio, things like the Decameron Opera Coalition are allowing people to have someone in Houston say, I would like to see Milwaukee Opera Theater's world premiere, and they can see it. And someone in Chicago, a Chicago Fringe Opera audience member, can see something by Opera in the Heights in Houston. So I hope that by keeping up the coalition and by encouraging people to work together like that, we can have people see one another's operatic works across the globe. And also we can see things if everyone sees this piece and perhaps more people want to produce an in-person version afterwards, there can be second and third and fourth productions, and not sort of the endless parade of world premieres with no second production that we sometimes see in opera.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, what a wonderful conversation. I told you were going to see something quite extraordinary. Thank you in absentia, Peter Hilliard, Matt Boresi, Maria Sensi Sellner. Something sounds like a lot of your meetings had some good Italian food and wine. I hope so. All I can say, ladies and gentlemen, is in this difficult time that the clouds keep rolling by and we all keep looking for silver linings. Tonight, you saw one. Good night. Wow, you guys are great. I'm just over the moon. This is fantastic.
Thank you
Johan, I
so
hope
much.
we might still be streaming. This is like the live little thing. I never know when we're actually